The vast, dimly lit chamber of the Galactic Council echoed with hushed whispers. Long, sleek alien forms sat at an endless table, their many eyes flickering with nervous energy. Above them, holographic projections of star maps swirled, showing countless systems in orderly chaos. But at the edge of that map, nestled in a forgotten corner, was a tiny blue dot, Earth, a world considered irrelevant, inconsequential, until now. We can't let this happen. A voice crackled in the silence, breaking the tension. It was Lord Zoreth, a towering being of silver and obsidian, whose mandibles clicked with frustration. He was the most vocal of those who wanted to maintain the status quo. We've kept them hidden for centuries. We cannot allow a rogue signal to ruin everything. But they are more than just a signal now, replied Takan, a being of fluid, changing shape, speaking calmly but with an underlying note of alarm. The Terran signal, it's growing louder, more aggressive. They've discovered us. A flicker of motion passed across the projections. The Earth was no longer just a lost dot on a map. Now its transmissions were clear, chaotic bursts of humanity's strange culture. Radio shows, films, music, and, most disturbingly, broadcasts of their violent sports. A galaxy so advanced, so orderly, had never encountered a species like this. The Terrans were unpredictable, impulsive, and raw. Dangerously so. They shouldn't even be here, said Kranix, a three-legged scholar from the Aradim people, his tentacles twitching with agitation. Their technology is primitive. They should be locked in isolation, not throwing around signals like a weapon. But they've built something, Takan responded, his voice soft yet deadly serious. Something powerful. Their idea of war, conflict, it's not like ours. It's chaotic, but there's genius in it. And that's what terrifies us. These humans are different. A silence fell over the chamber. For centuries, the Council had hidden the Earth, had buried it in galactic lore as a myth, a planet too dangerous to encounter. But now, the Terrans had pierced the silence. A broadcast had gone viral, a single image from Earth that no one had expected, a human fighter, bloody but triumphant, holding a helmet aloft in a brutal display of victory. The image spread like wildfire through the Council's networks, and it was clear. The Terrans were no longer ignorant children. They were ready for the galaxy. You're overreacting, Lord Zoreth finally sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. They're nothing more than a primitive species with a hunger for violence. They'll burn themselves out, just like all the others. Takan's eyes flickered with unease. Maybe. Or maybe they won't. His voice dropped to a near whisper, laden with a warning the Council was unwilling to hear. Maybe it's too late. Outside, the stars continued to gleam, their light unnoticed by those in the chamber. The galaxy, vast and infinite, was waiting for the next move, waiting for the Earth to rise or fall. And the Galactic Council had only just realized they had underestimated humanity. The Arizona sun blazed in the sky, casting long shadows over the dry, cracked Earth. Dust kicked up from the highway as a group of bikers roared past, their engines growling like a pack of hungry beasts. At the local dive bar, a mix of country music and the sharp scent of barbecue filled the air. It was just another afternoon, another rowdy crowd of humans enjoying the simplicity of their world. But for the alien delegation, everything was about to go horribly wrong. The group of aliens had landed quietly in the outskirts of town, their ship a sleek, metallic serpent blending into the desert's horizon. They were high-ranking diplomats sent by the Galactic Council to observe Earth, to find out why the planet's signal had slipped through their perfect web of secrecy. Their mission was simple: gather information, report back, and ensure no one learned about the existence of the Council's most guarded secret. But they hadn't anticipated Earth's tendency to throw the unexpected into the mix. The aliens, tall and graceful, stepped out of their ship, their shimmering skin and translucent eyes giving them an ethereal appearance. They stood out like stars in a desert storm, drawing the curious stares of the locals. The humans, however, didn't offer the expected awe or wonder. Instead, they stared with a mix of confusion and disinterest, unsure of what to make of these strange visitors. That was when things started to spiral. A couple of bikers, rough around the edges and already 2 beers deep, noticed the aliens and, without a second thought, revved their engines. They roared over to the group, their eyes wide with drunken excitement. "What the hell are you guys supposed to be?" One of the bikers, a thick, bearded man with a leather vest, yelled. He leaned off his bike, squinting at the tall aliens like they were an oddity in a circus. The aliens, startled by the loud noise and confused by the raucous behavior, took a step back. They tried to communicate in a series of melodic clicks and smooth gestures, but their words only made the situation worse. The bikers, with their brains filled with nothing but beer and adrenaline, thought the gestures were a challenge. Without warning, the biker in the front lunged forward, throwing a wild punch at the nearest alien. The alien dodged, but the biker's fist connected with the ground, sending dust into the air. A second punch flew, this time aimed at another alien's torso. The alien shimmered and stepped aside with ease. But now the misunderstanding was complete. The bikers thought it was a game. The situation turned chaotic in an instant. More bikers joined the fray, shouting, laughing, and throwing punches in their drunken haze. They didn't understand the aliens' gestures or their beauty, only that they were different, something to conquer, to prove their strength against. Back at the bar, the owner, an older man named Hank, watched from the window with disbelief as the scene unfolded. His face twisted in confusion as he muttered under his breath, "What the hell's going on out there?" Meanwhile, the aliens tried to retreat, their graceful forms dodging the blows. But the sheer force of human unpredictability was too much. One alien, cornered, took out a small device, a tranquilizer, intended to put an end to the madness. But it was too late. The bikers, unaware of the alien's defensive measure, yanked it away, further escalating the already spiraling mess. The first contact between Earth and the galactic powers had begun, but not in any way anyone had planned. The chaos outside the bar had reached fever pitch. The desert sun beat down relentlessly, but it might as well have been 1,000 degrees with the heat of the moment. Biker engines roared as the aliens, in their shimmering forms, danced awkwardly around the drunk, wild humans who seemed hell-bent on turning first contact into a strange kind of game. The biker gang's leader, Big Tony, was in the thick of it, grinning like a madman as he swung his fist toward the nearest alien's jaw. The alien, a tall being of silvery blue skin and translucent limbs, sidestepped the blow with unsettling grace. But the humans didn't know that this wasn't a game. It was a disaster waiting to happen. "You think you're faster than me, huh?" Big Tony barked, laughing loudly. He pulled out a wrench from his belt, holding it like a weapon. "Let's see how quick you really are." With a swing, the wrench flew toward the alien, who barely managed to duck. The wrench struck the side of the alien ship, leaving a deep dent in the hull. Sparks flew from the metal, and a shrill warning beep rang from the vessel's systems. The alien's face, if one could call it that, twisted in confusion. Then something colder appeared in their gaze. They weren't going to let this escalate any further. "Enough," the alien leader, a female with glowing violet eyes, said sharply, her voice calm but full of authority. She raised her arm, a soft pulse of light flowing from her fingertips, and the ground beneath Big Tony's feet vibrated. He stumbled back, disoriented, and suddenly found himself looking up at the sky as though gravity had suddenly lost its grip on him. The other bikers paused, unsure of what to do. Was this some kind of mind trick, a hallucination, or had they just picked a fight with something way beyond their comprehension? "Whoa, whoa, hold up!" One of the bikers, a scrappy woman with tattoos covering her arms, shouted as she threw her hands up. "I didn't sign up for this." But it was too late. The aliens, now on edge and desperate to regain control, pressed forward with swift movements, trying to make their escape. However, it wasn't the easy, graceful retreat they had planned. The humans were fast, relentless, and unpredictable. The alien leader, her calm demeanor slowly slipping into frustration, raised her other arm. The sky above darkened for a split second, and a soft hum filled the air. Without warning, the ground shook beneath the bar, and a wall of sound erupted, knocking everyone off their feet. The humans, unable to withstand the shockwave, tumbled to the ground, stunned and disoriented. In that moment, the alien delegation saw their opening. With the bikers scrambling and cursing in the dirt, they turned and bolted toward their ship. But the humans weren't done. From behind them, a loud voice rang out. "Not so fast, Shiny. You ain't getting away that easy." A sudden, chaotic roar of engines filled the air as more bikes screeched to life, with a dozen more bikers charging toward the ship. The alien delegation barely had time to react before the humans, in a frenzy, launched themselves at their vessel. It was clear now there would be no peaceful getaway. The first full-on encounter between Earth and the galactic powers had begun, not in the sterile corridors of diplomacy, but in the wild, untamed heat of human unpredictability. The aliens quickly realized they were in over their heads, and the Terran response was something they couldn't have prepared for. The scene outside the bar had descended into total chaos. The sleek, otherworldly ship, once a shining marvel of alien technology, now sat surrounded by a swarm of human bikers, each more determined than the last to throw a wrench into first contact. The metallic vessel groaned under the strain of the relentless onslaught, its hull dented and scratched from blunt objects and stray kicks. The alien leader, still struggling to keep her calm, glared at her surroundings. She had never expected this. Her hands shook as she flicked a control on her wrist device, activating the ship's emergency shields. A soft hum filled the air, and a shimmer of translucent energy enveloped the ship, warding off the worst of the damage. But the bikers weren't backing off. They just seemed to grow bolder, more aggressive. Move, the alien leader hissed, her voice sharp as a blade. She gestured to the others, who had gathered around the ship's entrance, panic slowly creeping into their movements. They had to get back to the council. They had to report what had just happened. And more importantly, they had to leave before things got any worse. But the humans weren't giving them the chance. "Hey, get the hell away from that ship!" shouted Big Tony, now back on his feet, his eyes wild with excitement. He swung a large chain in the air, cracking it against the ship's shield with a loud clang. "This is our territory." The alien leader's patience snapped. She was no stranger to conflict. But this was madness. These weren't warriors. These were drunk, wild creatures who believed everything could be solved by force. With a low growl, she raised her arm and summoned a pulse of energy that cracked the air like thunder. It surged toward the bikers, knocking them back with a force that sent several tumbling to the ground, unconscious. The others staggered, temporarily stunned, as the leader signaled for the ship's ramp to lower. "We don't have time," she said urgently to her crew. "Get inside. Now." The remaining members of the delegation hesitated, looking back at the humans as they struggled to recover. The scene was unlike anything they had experienced. In most encounters, the alien visitors would have faced a formal response, an ambassadorial meeting, a diplomatic talk. Instead, they were met with a display of reckless human behavior, as chaotic and unpredictable as the planet itself. With another blast from the ship's shield generator, the remaining bikers were pushed back, their shouts fading as the alien crew scrambled for cover. The ramp began to lift, sealing off the only way into the ship. The leader gave one last look at the scene before her eyes narrowing with a blend of frustration and confusion. The humans had just made things far more complicated than they needed to be. The ship's engines hummed to life, the ground beneath it shaking with the force of its ascent. But just as it began to rise into the air, a shrill whine pierced the air. An explosion from below. A ball of flame erupted from the ground, sending a shockwave through the ship's hull. The ship rocked violently, nearly throwing everyone off balance. "What the hell was that?" someone yelled in the chaos inside. The alien leader's eyes flashed with alarm. The humans were following them. They hadn't just stumbled into this mess. They had made it clear they weren't going to let these aliens escape. The ship's sensors blinked red as several bikes, dozens in fact, roared into the air, launching themselves on an impossible chase. "Brace yourselves," the leader ordered, her voice tight. "We're not just running away. We're fighting for our survival." And with that, the ship accelerated, its engines blasting through the air as the first true test of humanity's resolve began to unfold in a high-speed chase that would take the entire galaxy by storm. The ship shot through the sky, its engines roaring with a fury that sent a wave of heat rippling across the desert below. Dust clouds whipped into the air, stinging the eyes of the few remaining bikers who had dared to follow. The alien vessel, sleek and glowing, soared upward at breakneck speed, but the humans weren't done yet. They weren't going to let this opportunity slip away. Big Tony, who had barely regained his footing after being knocked off balance by the ship's last energy pulse, was already in motion. He revved his bike to life, the engine sputtering but steadying as he sped down the dirt trail. His face was a mix of determination and raw, unfiltered adrenaline. "Get after them," he shouted, gesturing to the others. "We ain't letting these freaks off the hook." The bikers, now a ragtag band of rebels, followed his lead. Engines roared to life as they sped forward, kicking up clouds of dust as they turned their attention skyward, watching the alien ship climbing higher, leaving a trail of heat in its wake. But Tony and the rest of the gang weren't deterred. They weren't fast enough to catch the ship in the air, but they knew the desert, they knew the terrain, and they knew how to fight dirty. The ship's alien crew was already scrambling, locking down their systems and preparing for the worst. The ship shuddered as it cleared the lower atmosphere, only to feel the tug of gravity, an unnatural pressure trying to pull them back to Earth's surface. We need more speed, the alien leader muttered under her breath, adjusting the ship's power levels. Her violet eyes narrowed as she analyzed the chase, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface in front of her. They're still on our tail. We can't let them catch us. But it wasn't just Big Tony and his gang chasing them anymore. The desert was vast, but it was not empty. More bikers, more renegades, and even a handful of local thrill-seekers joined the pursuit, throwing themselves into the chase with reckless abandon. Their vehicles, built for speed and toughness, weren't the best for high-speed aerial pursuit, but they didn't need to be. They had something else, sheer, untamed human will. The alien ship, once a symbol of power and precision, began to feel the pressure. It moved at speeds too fast for its original design, pushing its engines to their limits. Inside the cockpit, alarms blared as the ship strained under the stress. We need to shake them off. The leader snapped to her crew, her voice tense with urgency. The ship's engine screamed as it banked sharply, tilting into a steep descent. Below, the bikers scrambled, trying to keep up with the sudden change in direction. They weren't about to give up. If anything, the drop into the valley below only spurred them on. The chase had turned into something primal, a test of survival, speed, and pride. Big Tony, his face a mask of fierce determination, slammed the throttle to the limit, his bike kicking up dust and rocks as he raced through the rough terrain. The wind whipped past him, but he was too focused, too driven by the thrill of the chase. The sky above, once so calm and untouched, had become a battlefield, a place where humanity, in all its raw, chaotic glory, was fighting for its place among the stars. The alien ship plunged lower, weaving through the valley, narrowly missing jagged rocks and cliffs. Tony and his gang followed close behind, their bikes pushing through the narrow pass. The air grew thinner, the pressure mounting as both sides closed in on the inevitable conclusion of this high-speed chase. It wasn't just a race anymore. It was the beginning of something far bigger. Earth, once hidden away, was now making its statement to the galaxy. Humanity wasn't going to be forgotten. And it certainly wasn't going down without a fight. High above Earth, in the cold silence of orbit, the Galactic Council's observation station floated like a forgotten ghost. Sleek and silver, shaped like a massive ring, it had once been a symbol of silent control, a watchful eye over the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy. Now that control was unraveling. Inside the central chamber, the Council had gathered. Dozens of alien species filled the marble-like amphitheater. Their skin shimmered, eyes glowed, and voices buzzed in strange tones, layered with centuries of diplomacy and secrets. At the center, a tall, robed figure stood. A Sorith Prime, the same species that had first found Earth a century ago and voted to keep it hidden. Screens above them flickered with live feeds. Human bikes roaring through canyons, the alien delegation's damaged ship swerving low across the desert, and Earth's people, not military, not politicians, but ordinary citizens, giving chase with wild, reckless determination. This is a disaster, ised one counselor, his tendrils twitching with panic. They were supposed to be primitive. They are primitive, said another, his scaled face grim. That's what makes them so dangerous. A third counselor, taller and older, slammed a fist against the glowing console. You said they weren't ready for contact. You said they couldn't reach us. They didn't reach us. The Sorith Prime said coldly. We reached them, by accident. The room fell silent. For a moment, only the sound of the alien ship's heartbeat-like engine echoed through the speakers. The humans were still chasing, still fighting. Not because they knew who these aliens were, but because someone had invaded their world and run. Earth didn't like runners. Send a retrieval team, the Sorith Prime commanded. We must contain this before it spreads. But a voice from the corner of the room cut in. A new voice, calm, deep, and oddly amused. Too late. All heads turned to the screen. The projection showed satellite footage of Earth's global networks lighting up. Someone had captured the chase on their phone. The footage had already hit the internet. Humans around the world were watching in real time, sharing, analyzing, speculating. The veil was gone. Containment failed, the technician reported, trembling. Human social media is faster than light. The Sorith Prime stared at the data pouring in. News anchors screaming about flying ships, Reddit threads exploding with theories, TikTok videos of aliens dodging beer bottles. It was unstoppable. One counselor spoke softly, almost in awe. They were never going to stay hidden. We should have reached out, tried diplomacy. Diplomacy, the Sorith Prime snapped. With them. The screen changed again. A final feed. Big Tony, helmet off, face smeared with dust and blood, yelling into a radio someone had handed him. "We're not stupid," he said. "You came here without asking. You ran like cowards. Now you want to hide again? Too bad. We see you. The whole damn world sees you." The chamber fell quiet again. Earth had spoken, and the galaxy, once watchers from above, was about to learn what it meant when humanity finally looked back. Back on Earth, the tension was palpable. From the dusty deserts of Arizona to the neon-lit streets of Tokyo, every corner of the planet seemed to be holding its breath. News outlets broadcast the images of alien ships zooming across the skies above the Earth's surface. The chaos unfolding in the desert had sparked something deep in humanity's heart, a mixture of awe, fear, and fierce defiance. In the small town where it had all begun, the air was thick with the low hum of uncertainty. The biker gang had scattered, some heading back home, others looking for a place to regroup. But one thing was clear: the world was waking up. At a small diner on the outskirts of Chicago, a group of teenagers sat glued to their phones. The video from Arizona had gone viral, and it was all they could talk about. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, overheard their conversation as she refilled their sodas. "Do you think they're dangerous?" one of the boys asked, his voice shaky. "The aliens, I mean." Another teen, a girl with bright blue hair, smirked. "Dangerous? Man, if I were them, I'd be scared. Look at how many people have already seen that video. We'll be watching them every step of the way. And you know what? I bet we're not the only ones." Her words hung in the air, thick with truth. All around the world, people were watching, analyzing, and speculating. Social media feeds were flooded with theories, jokes, and theories of their own. The idea of aliens on Earth was no longer confined to the realm of science fiction. It was a new reality. And humanity, for better or worse, wasn't backing down. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower's lights flickered as a news broadcast blared across the screen of a crowded cafe. A young woman, clutching a coffee cup, watched in stunned silence. "It's real," she whispered to her friend, a girl whose eyes were wide with disbelief. Across the Atlantic in New York, people were glued to their televisions. The streets were buzzing with conversation, panic, curiosity, fear, all woven together in a complex tapestry of human emotions. The streets had never seemed so full of possibility and uncertainty. No one knew what to expect next, but everyone knew one thing for sure: there was no turning back. The United Nations had already called an emergency session, but the decisions that followed were unclear. Military forces were on high alert, but what could they possibly do against a race of beings capable of flying ships faster than sound? Leaders were scrambling, trying to keep the panic at bay. They debated in darkened rooms, consulting experts, while the rest of the world waited, wondering when, if there would be an answer. In the underground, far from the eyes of the powerful underground hacker networks buzzed with activity. The footage from Arizona had already been copied, mirrored, and distributed across countless servers. The world had seen the truth, and now humanity was preparing to confront it. If the aliens thought they could hide or escape, they were sorely mistaken. The people of Earth weren't just observers. They were participants in this new age, and they weren't about to let anything go unanswered. As night fell over the globe, one thing was clear. The alien delegation was no longer just a secretive anomaly. They were part of a larger equation now, a problem that humanity was suddenly very much a part of solving. And for the first time in a long time, humanity wasn't afraid of the unknown. They were ready to face it head-on. The alien ship, its once pristine hull now battered and scorched, hovered just above the desert floor, the engines screaming in protest. Inside, the crew scrambled, frantically pushing buttons, checking systems, and trying to stabilize their failing escape. They had never anticipated anything like this, a pursuit so relentless, so wild, that even their most advanced technology couldn't escape the sheer human tenacity pushing them into a corner. The leader, her violet eyes flickering between the monitors, felt the weight of defeat beginning to settle in. They were no longer the invaders, no longer the ones in control. They were the hunted. They had made a grave mistake by underestimating Earth and its inhabitants. "We need to initiate emergency extraction," she said, her voice tight with urgency. She knew it was futile, but it was the only plan left. Outside, Big Tony and the remaining bikers hadn't let up. Their engines roared through the air as they pursued the alien ship, their bikes kicking up a trail of dirt and dust as they navigated the rocky landscape. Big Tony, his hands gripping the handlebars tightly, pushed forward with an almost manic focus. This wasn't just a chase anymore. It was a personal vendetta. He had never imagined he'd be part of a story like this. But now that he was, there was no turning back. The humans had finally caught on to something they'd only ever dreamed of, a fight on equal terms. And they weren't about to lose it. "We're catching up," one of the bikers shouted over the comms. His voice crackled with excitement. "They can't outrun us." The alien ship wobbled in midair, barely able to keep up its speed. A sharp turn sent it veering dangerously toward the ground, its metal body scraping against jagged rocks. Inside, alarms blared. The crew members looked at each other, eyes wide with panic. Their shields were failing. The humans were gaining on them, and they had no backup plan. "Prepare for impact." The alien leader barked, gripping the control panel. "We need to make a stand." The ship shot forward, just as the first biker shot into the air, riding his bike higher, daring to get closer. Big Tony's bike roared as he pushed ahead of the pack, ready to make a final move. Just then, a crackling noise broke through the chaos. An emergency transmission. A voice, calm and clear, cut through the frenzy. "This is Commander Ellis of Earth Defense," the voice said, cutting through the static. "You're surrounded. Surrender your ship and your crew immediately, or we will be forced to take action." For the first time since they had arrived on Earth, the alien leader's face betrayed her true emotions: fear. She knew exactly who was behind that voice. Earth had mobilized. The humans weren't just a rabble anymore. They were organized, and they were coming for them. Big Tony glanced up, eyes narrowing. He could see the ship slowing, a sign that it was struggling. His lips curled into a grin. "Hell no," he muttered, throttling the engine one last time. He wasn't about to let them escape. Not this time. The ship's engine sputtered as the alien leader, desperate, fired off a volley of energy blasts in a final futile attempt to shake the humans off. But it was too late. Earth's military had already closed in, sending reinforcements into the air, their own ships locking onto the alien vessel with precise coordination. One of the blasts struck a nearby rock formation, sending a cloud of dust into the air. The rest of the bikers dove for cover, but Tony held his ground, gritting his teeth and watching as the alien ship shuddered in the sky. This was no longer a battle for survival. It was a battle for the future. Earth had made its stand, and the galaxy would have to reckon with it. As the ship faltered, its control systems failing, the humans were ready. The tide had turned. The chase had come to an end. And Earth was no longer a secret.